Hey everyone, good evening. I'm really happy to have you guys here. And tonight's radio broadcast is going to be all about how I went from harboring a ton of introverted tendencies into more extroverted tendencies. So let's just start from where I guess it all began, which is pretty much throughout the entirety of my life. I have always enjoyed spending time alone and just focusing on doing my own things, whether it was playing games alone or even having a small group of friends when I was a child that I used to run around and play with or visit their houses and play. All in all, I much more cherished the time that I had when I was by myself. That has changed as I've aged, but at the time, that's how I felt. And the more that I was bullied, especially in late elementary school, into middle school, into high school, it further aggrandized the problem and inflated it to such a point where the time that I was spending with myself was now being obsessed over, where I would always just crave this alone time to get away from people, to spend time in my little cave and never come out. But that was, on one hand, making me miserable, but also, on the other hand, it was like an addiction almost to be inside. And I kept feeding myself the excuse over and over again of, it's just because I'm introverted, this is just who I am. I have a hard time talking to people or meeting people, and this is just the way it is. So this is just something I'll not just adjust to, because I'm already adjusted to spending a lot of time to myself, but this is the way it's going to be forever, and that's what I have to adjust to. And deep down, I knew that that made me feel miserable, but I still insisted that me being alone was the best thing for me. So what ended up happening is, as I was making my way through college, there were just natural impulses and thoughts that were coming to me very naturally of wanting to talk to people, of wanting to meet people and engage with people, especially people that I found extraordinarily stimulating. And I had no real skills to be able to approach them. I was extremely awkward and nobody wanted to be around me, not just because of my awkwardness, but because of how intolerable I was, in terms of I had practically no social awareness. I had no self-awareness, and I just kind of did whatever I decided to do impulsively in that moment. And sometimes that led to good outcomes, something really exciting or bold that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to engage with. But all in all, it wasn't a really good time. It did lead me to more disastrous places than helpful places, I'll say. But with that said, even during this time, I did manage to secure a few friends that are still my friends to this day. And I know they're friends because they suffered through my intolerable stage of life and still were there for me and still provided really beautiful elements to my life with their own story, their own wisdom. And I do whatever I can today to provide the same for them, should they need an outside perspective or whatever it is that I'm capable of providing. So with that said, the question becomes, how did I go from having these introverted qualities to crafting extroverted qualities? And the answer to that is very similar to an answer that I gave to the question, how did I begin reading, which is in my last episode, and this can also be tied to my first episode as well, which is, there is something within you where if you really sit down with yourself and reflect, either through meditation or you just sit there and really reflect about your day, you do nightly reflections or weekly reflections, or however it is that you come back into yourself and reflect, these are the things that I have done today. Are these things that I'm actually proud of? Are these things that could have been executed better? Or what are the wins that I have? What are the losses that I have? What are the things that went okay but can be improved upon, etc. So, with this in particular, I thought, well, I don't want to accept the fate that I'm going to be alone forever in terms of just not talking to people. You know, when I created what my life's task was, I knew that that was going to be a very thorny path, that there will be pangs of loneliness and hardship tied with it. And you guys can see this in my previous episodes as well, but just as a too long didn't read segment of what my life's task is, it's to understand all people of various cultures and various walks of life and understand how they got to their present worldview through their life experience and being able to translate their experience into my own words and carry that with me to people who exist in an antithetical tribe. And I sincerely hope to tie bridges and find similarities and commonalities with people's life experiences and create this field where we're able to come together, and instead of automatically becoming defensive over another person's views of something or another person's sense of morality or their principles about something, but instead have enough inner resilience and strength to not only not get instinctively defensive, but to stand strong and not even recognize that their view of something is even an offense to begin with, but it's their worldview, and being able to bounce ideas back and forth and not necessarily completely proselytize the other person or convert them to your tribe, but to find the elements of value that you see in an opposing tribe's values and being able to incorporate that in yourself in order to make yourself a stronger person, or even blowing this idea up on a more grand scale to actually come together and look at so many varying sides of a particular dilemma and working together to create something truly beautiful that can only be achieved through collaboration of varying tribes, especially. So, walking down that path is very difficult for me because I understand people's views, but I have to do it from an outsider's perspective. Being fully immersed in a community of people, while is something that I do in order to understand their worldview a lot better and am able to internalize it in my own way, I don't belong to that tribe of people. I always keep a certain distance to make sure that I don't get sucked into it. And to this day, I don't really say that I belong to any particular tribe of people, because that would, in my mind, hurt the task of which I'm trying to achieve, which is when I approach people with arguments from an opposing tribe, I want to make sure that they know that I'm not a representative of that tribe, that I am someone that exists outside of the tribe, but have taken the time to understand their views as best as I can and am able to express those thoughts and ideas in a way that isn't as hostile to the tribe that I'm trying to communicate with that might have antithetical views. So, all in all, what I'm trying to say is that life's task that I'm actively in pursuit of achieving, something that I'm always going to make progress in but never truly achieve at the end of the day, is a very long and thorny path. And that comes at the expense of a tremendous amount of loneliness. Because I'm not a part of any particular tribe of people, I have a hard time connecting with people on my plane, let's call it. But most people that I meet usually have friends within their own tribe or a particular tribe of which they belong to. And because I'm not a part of a tribe, it's difficult for me to meet people. But with that said, I didn't want to use that as an excuse. I still wanted to go out there, still wanted to meet people and engage with people and see the world through the lens of humanity, not just a particular tribe. So something that I started to do is I got a chess set and I already loved going to cafes. A hobby of mine is making coffee. I love making my French press or my pour over or my lattes because I have a small little espresso machine. And and I just love the process of working directly with espresso, of measuring it out, tamping it, the whole thing. And for that reason, I just love going to cafes. I love doing coffee tastings and things like that. So I went to a cafe, I set up my chess set, and I laid out a deck of cards as well, just in case people don't know how to play chess. And I just started reading. I started doing things that felt good to me to know that I'm actively bettering myself through reading nonfiction or reading fiction that's directly tied to nonfiction. And what I mean by that is right now I'm reading a collection of works by Mark Twain. Presently, I'm reading Tom Sawyer right now, at the same time reading a biography on Mark Twain. So I want to see how Tom Sawyer is used as Mark Twain's alter ego, and reading about Mark Twain's life and reading about the adventures that Tom goes through and being able to connect them hand in hand is a really beautiful experience that I'm having right now, and I really quite enjoy it. But outside of that, most of my other reading material is nonfiction, and it helps me better myself in that way. But being able to create a space where people are still able to come up to me, because it's not just the chess set and the cards. I have a little sign as well that people can just walk right up and read, and it just says, let's talk about life, or let's play a couple of games, or let's do both. Or I'm paraphrasing my sign, but that's the idea of it. And I have a ton of people come up to me saying that they might not have the time to play, but they really appreciate what it is that I'm doing. And I love those small interactions. To the people that don't know how to play chess but can play a game of cards, I love that as well. And I sit down with them and we talk while playing cards, and that's really nice. If we actually do end up playing chess, we'll play chess in the beginning, and it will gradually bleed into a real conversation, and the game of chess just becomes irrelevant at that point. But it's a really great catalyst, is my point. I had to be creative in how I met people, because just walking up to people and initiating a conversation is horrifying to me. And it's really difficult for me to see outside of myself in terms of, well, if I was just relaxing and vibing and I was just enjoying where I was in the moment, which is something that I really love to do all the time, especially when it comes to bringing myself back into the present, not worrying about the past or the future, but just existing where I am. Having someone just come up to you and start a conversation, I become extremely suspicious of, because every time that that's happened, a person has always had some ulterior motive as to why they're actually talking to me. And it's not just because to create a beautiful human experience of people connecting through conversation, but it's more of, all right, so now that we're a little bit more familiar, let me sell you this product or this company or my XYZ. And it doesn't feel good. And I don't want to give that impression when I communicate with other people. But that being said, there is a particular way to go about communicating with other people. And it's something that I'm still working on to this day. But I'm at least going out more and talking to people more, not just in my one-on-one chess setting, because that does give people an opportunity to know that I'm not trying to sell them anything, that they're the ones approaching me to come and play, that the power is in their hands to want to do something with me directly at the cafe. But me going up and talking with other people is a completely different story, and something that I still struggle with, but have been actively working towards every single time that I leave my apartment, which is every day. So going out and communicating with people and talking to people and seeing the beauty in other people is definitely a challenge, but I do know in my heart of hearts that it's the right thing for me to be doing, because I know how miserable I was when it came to the idea that I needed to accept my loneliness, my natural introverted state, but I refuse to accept that as my fate. I wanted better for myself, especially if I'm going to pursue my life's task in the way that I want to pursue it, which is giving it my absolute all towards making progress within it. I needed to be able to recognize what my insecurity is, which is communicating well with other people, not making them feel inferior or not making them feel pressured or afraid or suspicious by any means. I do feel that there is going to be a natural element of suspicion in today's day and age, at least in the Western world, when it comes to communicating with someone new. But at the end of the day, I think it's just the most that I can give is what I'm capable of in the present moment. And I do try really hard to introduce myself, to break the ice with a simple, superficial conversation. And hopefully, within that superficial conversation, there can be scintillates of potential depth that we can dive deeper into as the conversation progresses. Because the moment that a person starts getting a feel for who you are, I've noticed is when they feel a little bit more comfortable opening up about maybe some of their own personal values that might have points of contention within them, or open up about something that's really personal or very valuable to them that they expose not because it is personal, but because it's something that they truly value and want to share. And I think that's the really beautiful thing in human conversation, being able to recognize this person values this particular thing or this event or this action or this whatever, and being able to peer into another person's world and recognize that particular thing as something holding great value to them and not to you, I think is absolutely amazing. And the more that we appreciate the differences we have, the more we're okay with people being different. And I don't mean to say being different in terms of superficial things like skin color or ethnicity. Yes, that is a problem in some cases, but I'm more talking about people's personal senses of values and their principles and how they choose to engage with the world, which could prove to be contentious through the eyes of antithetical tribes. So it just comes down to, what is it about you that makes you who you are, and recognizing the beautiful elements within that. If there are elements, and there will be, that you can't connect with, that is perfectly fine, because their life is their own and there are elements in their life that you cannot connect with. But at the end of the day, you recognize those things as a part of who they are and appreciate them for it. Or if you decide to build a further rapport with them, appreciate them about it and appreciate and love them for it. And I will say that my girlfriend right now, she considers herself both introverted and extroverted. I know there's a word for that. I think it's like ambivert or something. But the way she explains it to me is she has a desire to spend time alone and to feel like she's being recharged when she has her own time. And she gets this feeling of a fresh recharge when she spends time by herself doing activities that she really loves, such as also going to a cafe and maybe playing a one-player board game or doing a puzzle, because she really loves solving puzzles and loves escape rooms for that matter, and can do those solo if she wants to, and if she can find one that will allow her to do it solo. But my point is that she does feel those tendencies to want to be by herself and feel really happy with that, but she also goes out of her way to be social with other people. She goes out into the world and goes to events that are all about board games, and she'll meet a lot of really interesting people at those events. Or there's a musical gig she'll do, and she's not going to that gig because it pays. She goes to the gig because of the social aspect of it, because the pay is not great for the amount of hours that she's required to be there. And she can leave it at any time, but she loves being there because it allows her to meet people and it gives her an opportunity to practice her music, which is beautiful to me. And just seeing her natural ability to speak with people, while at the same time harboring comfortable feelings of wanting to be alone and spend time with herself and have the strength to not be terrified of her own thoughts, which I think a lot of people have issues with. She continues to inspire me in that way of, well, I could make the excuse that socially it's easier for her because of X, Y, and Z reasons, but that would just be me deluding myself and being much more pessimistic than I would need to be by any standard. But rather, instead, I can look at her and see her as a lighthouse, as a source of inspiration to say, she goes out into the world and very casually makes conversation with people. And even though she does have qualities where she feels happy being by herself, like I do, she can go out into the world and talk to people. And I think that's so amazing. So when I go out into the world and talk to people, it does feel a little awkward, but at least I'm doing it and I can feel proud of that. I can feel proud of the fact that I'm furthering my progress in my life's task. I can feel proud of the fact that when I'm going out into the world and talking to people, even if they feel suspicious, even if the conversation doesn't go well, even if the other person sees it as an opportunity to try to proselytize, I at least know that I'm sharpening a skill, that I'm going out into the world and making the uncomfortable comfortable, that I'm doing the things that I know in my heart of hearts to be the right thing for me. And being able to go out into the world and see the beautiful people within it and just casually walk up to someone and make their day 10 times better, not because you have an ulterior motive, not because they do, but because you're approaching them and just giving them a shining light on a potentially rainy day. You know, I remember I saw my grandfather just walk up to a street vendor who had no customers and appeared very under the weather, let's say, not in terms of sickness, but in terms of attitude. And he just walks up, and I was over on the other side of the street, but I was watching him. He just walks up, and after about 15 seconds, she's laughing, and her smile is as big as her face, and he was just walking back and just watching in 15 seconds, turning a person's entire day around, and he didn't need to know anything about her. I thought that was beautiful. And even though I do wish to have in-depth conversations with people to build better rapport with people, even those small interactions can prove to be extraordinarily beautiful and useful in the world. And that's just one of many differing ways in which I want to keep practicing my more extroverted qualities. And again, I can always revert to, well, being introverted is more natural to me. I am introverted, but that's me connecting with one particular trait of myself as an all-encompassing element of who I am. And that's not true. You know, in terms of my likes and my interests, I feel I'm pretty simple. But as a human being, everybody is complex in their own way. Human emotions are very, very rarely, even if ever, described through words. Human emotions are quite literally ineffable. We can describe them to the best of our ability or describe what it is that we're feeling, but there's always so much more nuance and complexity to the way we feel things. And that could be because of any number of reasons. It can be because of, well, this is what I'm feeling. Because if I acknowledge these other elements of what I'm feeling, that can be very embarrassing or humiliating. Or this one particular element is so overpowering that this is what I feel, even though underneath that thick surface is feelings of whatever. And I'm going to use an example to try to paint a better picture of that because I know that was kind of nebulous. Let's say you feel a tremendous amount of respect for your friend that got a promotion in the same company you work for. And you were just so thrilled for them, and you look at them and you say, you have been working hard for this. You have been, like, I have seen you excruciatingly working your butt off in order to get this, and you finally got there, and now it's just one step closer to your dream, etc. And you feel those those wonderful feelings of respect and admiration for your friend, and that's really thick and powerful, and your friend feels that and supports that, and you guys just love each other so deeply because of that incredible rapport you've built. But deep underneath that thick layer of respect and love and trust are feelings of potential envy. Not necessarily of them getting the position, maybe, but envy of their work ethic, envy of, wow, I saw them work excruciatingly hard to get to this task. I wish I had that. And kind of making a pity party or excuses for yourself of, you can do that. It's just you're caught in this spiral of personal laziness. And that doesn't mean to say that you yourself as a person are lazy, but it's more to say if there's a particular work ethic that you find extremely admirable in someone else that you don't think you can cultivate for yourself, you need to ask yourself why. And it's just elements like this of, well, if you truly dissect and reflect on what it is that you're feeling in any given moment, just peeling back all of the layers of this onion, this emotional onion, and really deciphering, okay, these are the primary things that I feel, the superficial layers. Like, I feel really happy and respectful, using the example. I feel very happy and respectful for this person, but underneath these layers are pangs of envy and a little bit of disgust at myself for not just necessarily feeling those feelings, because you shouldn't feel disgust for the way you feel something, but it's more of the disgust of not being able to achieve the expectations that you have for yourself and watching somebody else do that for themselves when you can't do it for yourself. And there's a feeling of sliminess that comes with that, and a desire to be a little bit more unctuous, which can be inscrutable to another person. So unless properly expressed to them, which that can be very embarrassing. So to try to communicate with someone openly and honestly about how it is you're feeling and what it is you're going to do about those feelings. Like going up to that friend that got the promotion and saying, we've known each other a long time, and I have to say that I truly, in my heart of hearts, am very proud of you. And I've seen the work you've been putting in, and I'm so thrilled for you, genuinely. But underneath the surface, I envy your work ethic. It's something that I've wished that I could cultivate for myself for a long time, and I have no idea how I can get to that point. And watching you do it created these pangs of envy, but your example is inspiring me to get to a better level, to reach not just your level, but to create this air of competition, to keep pushing each other to great heights. Obviously not to extreme heights, but to keep pushing each other to points where you're both lifting each other up to achieve a place of great mastery in your own respective fields. And there's a danger to this, because to the people who let that pith of envy just completely swallow them and consume them, misery loves company, and people are always going to try to reach up to bring you down to their level. And that's not what a true friend does, not in my experience. And to be able to go out into the world and have this emotional awareness, have that great rapport with your emotional self, and to the best of your ability, create a full understanding as to what you are experiencing emotionally and how you are going to chart your course of action based on that information. I think that's the really beautiful element of self-reflection, and being able to utilize those self-reflective skills in being social, in meeting new people, has proven to be nothing but extraordinarily useful and powerful for me. I feel so much stronger knowing that several years ago, me becoming social was more of a fantasy. It was more of a, oh, I'm not strong enough to do that, or I'm too insecure, or too weak, or too insociable, or too awkward, or too whatever to be able to engage with people. But it's a skill. It's a skill. And like any skill, you have to engage with it. You have to go out and do it. And I compare this to learning a language, which is you can do as much textbook research and reading as you want to do for it. But at the end of the day, you have to go out and practice it. You are not going to learn social skills like speaking a language to someone or like being sociable itself through a book. You can get great tips and tricks through them, through people who have mastered it or people who have experienced great success in it. But at the end of the day, you have to be the one to go out and see, okay, this experience trying to be social went wrong because I immediately dived into deep conversation when they didn't even want to have a conversation at all. You need to read the room better and kind of read people's body language in certain scenarios. Okay, so I did some quick research on body language. I brushed up on some history in that, and then I just went back out into the world and started looking at people's body language. I'm like, okay, this person is a little bit more open. This person has just communicated with the barista behind the counter and were very jovial, and he seems very affable, and it seems really nice to be able to, like, he seems like a really approachable person. So I'm going to try to go up to him and talk to him. So I went over to him and I spoke to him, and it was just a superficial layer of conversation. And unfortunately, it didn't dive deeper than that. But the fact that I was able to have a comfortable conversation, even a small one, that was such a big win. And I'm like, okay, well, I do want to build rapport with people. So I do know that this particular style helps me get my foot in the door. Okay, so now that I have my foot in the door, how am I going to inspire deeper conversation? And that's more of where I'm at now. It took me a long time just to get to this point, but even when I speak to people, I do love that feeling of I'm constantly sharpening my skills. And to know that I, as someone who was very closeted and very introverted, decided to not accept that as my fate, but rather just said, you know, it's going to be uncomfortable and painful and very awkward at first. And to a degree, it still is. But I'm much more happy and satisfied to know that I'm actually meeting people, even if people are still proselytizing, even if people still think that my view of the world or the actions that I've made for myself or the decisions I've made for myself, rather, are incorrect according to their worldview, then so be it. But at the end of the day, I'm really satisfied with the kind of person that I'm still structuring myself to become. And that wouldn't be possible if I just ignored the signs that were calling out to me to engage with things that I knew were very uncomfortable and very odd for me, very bizarre and awkward. And to be able to go out into the world and recognize your own unique tasks that go against your intuitive or intrinsic nature, then I don't know where I'd be today if I didn't do those things. And to be able to have this certain sense of pride to know that there are elements of life that I've been able to overcome and to conquer and to surpass in order to better focus on even bigger obstacles and progress through those bigger obstacles. Every victory gives me more and more strength. Every failure gives me more and more determination. And to know that I am just charging through obstacle after obstacle, even if I'm stuck on a particular obstacle for a long time, I know that I'm constantly working towards overcoming it and pressing through it and moving on to the next one. And developing extroverted qualities has been a behemoth of a task so far, and I still struggle with it in many cases. But to know that the skills are still being refined is so important to me, and I hope that this has helped you guys as well. So with that said, thank you guys so much for listening to this, and I will see all of you in the next broadcast. Have a great rest of your evening, everyone.